Welcome back to Elk Camp, guys. Welcome to the show tonight. You're not going to want to miss it. You know, one of the number one questions that we get is how to become a better elk caller. Well, today on today's show, that's exactly what we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss how to improve our elk calling confidence. We got the guides in the house. We got our hunting partners here. Everybody's ready to go. So y'all pull up a chair, dial your volume up just right. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your hosts Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gilly. You want to hunt elk, and they live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello again, everyone. If this is your first time with us, well, welcome back to the Elk Camp. And for those of you that have been following us for our show, welcome back again. And before we get started, I want Joe and Chav and I to give some shout outs to some of our ElkBro brothers and our listeners out there that have been in over 350 cities, grinding it out every week and every day with us, topping the downloaded charts for our show. Joe, I'm going to let you lead it off.
Yeah, I can't believe this, Gilbert. You know, over 350 cities, people from all over, 9 different countries. But we're just going to, a few of those names that are up at the top of the chart, I just think are so cool. And we want to give some shout outs out there. So the first one, I cannot believe how fitting this name is. But a big old shout out to Elko, Nevada. How's that for a name?
Elko, Nevada.
Nevada.
I've asked our guides, Joe Gilia and my hunting partner, Leroy Chavez. I've asked them who they know in Elko, Nevada. And I'm telling you, bro, I don't know anybody in Elko, and these guys don't. So from all of us to all of you in Elko, welcome back to the show.
And we also have a good contingent from Ethel, Idaho, and I hope I pronounced that name right.
Yeah, it sounds good, Chad.
Ethel,
for sure.
Idaho.
Yeah, another one's from Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Oshkosh.
So that's our brothers to the north, no doubt. We appreciate you tuning in, guys.
And even further, going over towards the east over there, Chelsea, Massachusetts is out there.
We had another one that sent in something this week from the great state of Michigan in Kalamazoo. So for all those Michiganders that are out there, whether you live like right here or over here or wherever, I know all that because I married a Michigander. So
I see.
Kalamazoo for sure.
And we're getting a good surge from the 505 Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Big shout out to Burke.
Yeah, buddy. That's awesome.
Also, our Frozen brothers up north up there, man, you know that they're thinking about it. They're up there topping the charts from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. And
from the wet city, I haven't been there ever unless it's been raining. Seattle, Washington comes in the house.
You know, was in Seattle, spotted some elk. My wife said, only you.
I believe they got some Thule elk up there too, Joe.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, I think they've got the Thule, and I want to say so. There's the Rocky Mountain, the Thule, and then the Roosevelt, right? So I think Seattle.
I know they have the Rosies, and I think they have the Rockies, and I thought the Thules were California, but I'm not too sure about that.
You sure could be right. Maybe it's the Roosevelt that they have. Yeah.
And a shout out to our neighbors to the north, about a 4-hour drive to Denver, Colorado. And I recall, was it last year? We were driving back down and I saw an elk herd right in the middle of a big subdivision. You know, those poor elk didn't know where to go.
Yeah, I've got a good friend of ours. Y'all know him really well, Bruce Gaynor. We call him Chicken Wire down here. He bought a place in Conifer, which is on the outskirts of Denver, and they've got elk on their place all the time, elk and mule deer and cougars and you name it. So just right outside, maybe 45 minutes to the southeast or southwest of Denver.
Right.
We appreciate all those listeners there out of Denver. We also got to give a huge shout out to the 281-713-832. It's so big, it's got to have 3 area codes. We're talking about H-Town, Houston, Texas. So all the people out of H-Town, we sure appreciate y'all tuning in.
And all you guys out there, man. We've got people from the Netherlands, from Sweden, from Spain, London, England. That it's just way cool. And want to thank all you guys for tuning in, listening to our show. We really hope that you're learning some things. Hope you enjoy hanging out with us and learning something about what we're so passionate about. So if we could also give some reminders to our listeners out there, guys, please subscribe. Just push that button on whatever app or you're listening to your podcast, or if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to us there. And if you would, there's a share button on that. Go ahead and share our podcast or YouTube with at least 5 of your hunting buddies or buddettes, man. I mean, just send it out there, and the more we have, the merrier, and it helps us and feel good about what we're doing for you. Okay, rate us, rate our show on your favorite podcast app, or also on the ElkBros YouTube channel. Reviews, right?
Right.
Could use some reviews, guys. Write one and let other people know what kind of show we have out here. If you like what you hear, or even if you don't, you are our biggest and our best ambassadors out there. And that means that you are helping us to promote something that is just awesome, as far as being able to go out in those woods, be part of the natural order of things, part of conservation, and going and chasing these majestic animals. So, go ahead and send those.
Yeah, and if you have any questions about elk hunting and would like to have it answered on our show, please just email your questions to info, that's INFO, @elkbros.com. We'll be glad to put your question up here on the show and answer them and have a full discussion about it. Joe, Chav, our next shout out needs to go to all the guys and gals who drew their New Mexico elk tags this last week for the 2019 season. It was epic.
Yeah, we were sweating it out, right?
No, everybody.
Everybody
was. I can't wait to get to elk camp. I can tell you that. And I know our guys are, that love to elk hunt together. We're stoked about it and blessed to be able to hunt together another year for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was supposed to come out on the 24th.
Yeah,
and
got it early.
What day did we leave camp from Texas? I think it was like the 20th or 21st, something right in that time.
Right.
And we're going down the road, and all of a sudden, man, my phone starts blowing up.
Yeah, it's supposed to be today.
Yeah. It was Manano's like, I drew. Yeah. So
leave it to the Venezuelan mafia to get the news first.
Yeah. So they were super excited. And it always feels good to know that part of it's already, in the basket and it's ready to go. And
also had their draw already is Wyoming, for the non-residents.
Right.
Arizona, Montana, and North Dakota.
Yep. Those guys have also drawn. They had their draws before us. So there's a lot of happy people in those states, but there's still some people out there sweating it out in some of those other states. Cause let's see, Utah is May 11th. Then comes Nevada. Elko, hope you guys get it, man.
No doubt.
Yeah, and they're May 24th. South Dakota, I went to South Dakota in the Black Hills, that trip we took, Chav.
Right.
And what do you think of that area?
God, it sure looked like there'd be a lot of elk in that area.
It was
beautiful country.
Beautiful country.
Beautiful country. I mean, just nice, beautiful rolling hill, thick grass, a lot of good moisture. So I never had thought of South Dakota as an elk destination, man, but, it's just beautiful out there. So their draw comes June 4th. Colorado, it says June 3rd to the 7th, but I bet it's going to be right around June 5th. The good thing about Colorado is if you don't draw, they usually have a lot of OTC tags over there that people can purchase.
OTC, we mean over the counter tag.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah, over the counter. So you can purchase those for particular areas. And there's even, if you go look at some of these states, they don't have just one draw. They even have other draws that take place for any additional leftover tags and stuff like that. And then they'll have special draws. So if you didn't get it in the first one, make sure you check your proc for your state and see what's happening as far as additional draws or possibility of over the counter. And there's some states that don't even have a draw. They just they're pretty much, you just buy your licenses there. So
I want to talk about my home state of Texas. We're getting a bigger and bigger elk herd out in the Glass Mountains and the Davis Mountains, and there's no season on them. I mean, they're not a creature that we have a season on. But I know Texas Parks and Wildlife every year are meeting to discuss that. I've got several buddies of mine that have shot bulls on low fence ranches. One of my buddies in Terrell County shot a 7x6 this year, probably scored 320, and it's on a low fence ranch. Now, no doubt those bulls probably got out.
So what do you mean by low
fence
fence ranch, Buh?
So we have high fence ranches that are 10-foot
game
fences,
ranches, right?
Game ranches.
Mm-hmm.
You've been on our ranch there at the Mac Pryor. It's got 3 sides of a game fence on it, and
Right.
then we're open on the front end of it, so it's not considered a total game ranch, high fence game ranch, right? So when I'm talking about low fence, I'm talking about just regular 5-strand barbed wire.
Right.
And so these are low fence ranches that are having elk herds come on. I mean, you and I both know, you and Chad both know that there's no 5-strand barbed wire that's going to keep an elk out.
Oh, no,
right?
no.
So, I mean, they'll step right over it like it's not even there. So,
well, and the public land
starting
that
to
you
kill
do
them in
have
Texas
too.
Yeah, for sure. But so there's a lot of these game ranches that have had them fight and get out of fences and stuff like that.
Right.
But what they're seeing out towards the west is those critters are coming out of the Glass Mountains and out of the Davis Mountains. There's a big herd of elk up there. And I got some buddies of mine that own property there, and they kill a bull every year off of that place.
So also, let's moving on. California, your draw is on June 13th. Oregon, June 20th. I look at some of these guys, man. June 20th. Washington, June 21st. Then residents of Wyoming are June 22nd. And get this, Idaho, July 6th. So some of these guys are like finding out they're getting tags, man. And I mean, they're having to turn around and get ready to, get everything together to head out to hunt. So
yeah, it won't be long.
No. And so I imagine that's why a lot of people have opportunities to try to draw tags in some different states. And if that's some of the things that you do. Well, again, Chav and I have never hunted out of New Mexico. It's always been in New Mexico. There might be a first time one day. It would be nice. It'd be nice on our bucket list there to do that. So it's not that we don't want to. It's been a couple of reasons. The fact that we actually hunt that first hunt in September. Right there, September 1st to September 15th, because then, I'm going out and I'm guiding after that point in time. So my schedule fills up real quick with that.
Joe, I hunted both sides. I've hunted the front end and I've hunted the back end. And I got to tell you, I was skeptical about the front end, but I'm not anymore. I mean, I'd rather hunt the front end of it. Number one, I feel like the animals aren't near as pressured. After 14 days of all of us stinking boys running up and down those hills, those elk get smart.
There's no more fun than being out there right around that 21st of September, man, when the equinox hits and those animals are screaming, they're in full rut. It's just so much fun. But it's, and we've talked about this before, on that early part of it, they're not herded up yet. Those big bulls are still shadowing. Your chances of getting one of those in there with different techniques are pretty good. When they get in there and they get herded up, then you have to use different strategies. So really, I mean, all of these times have their pluses and their minuses. It's just all about strategies. And we're going to, in our elk calling, we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit. And then we have a section in this confidence series that is on strategies, and we have a section on elk behavior. So we're going to be covering a lot of that to hopefully make people more comfortable with that.
Joe, do you really, I've hunted also in the muzzleloader season in October, and it was fantastic. I mean, they were going bonkers with the first
sure.
in October.
Yeah.
So for the guys out there that can't get off in September or whatever, I mean, that first week in October is special as well. And I think maybe even more special with all these bulls that are really going nuts trying to find cows. It was a little bit more difficult calling them because there were so many of them already cowed up and have a lot of cows with them. But there were tons of satellite bulls that were a lot easier to get at, right? Because they were, I mean, that you put when you went to bed, they were blowing you off your mattress. I mean, it was crazy. They'd come walk right by the camp all night.
Yeah, it's a super time. And if you're in New Mexico and you cannot get in September and you want to go October, heck yeah, that muzzleloader season. And remember, you can hunt that muzzleloader season with a primitive weapon, so you could hunt it with a bow. October 1st is berserk.
It really is. I've never seen that many bulls in one place. I was fortunate enough to hunt with a friend of mine. I didn't guide him. I was fortunate enough to hunt with him, and I called, I don't know, there was a lot of bulls. We come into this little park, and I've never seen that many bulls in one park. And I think we had 9 bulls there at one time. And I asked him to shoot the biggest one, and he liked one that was kind of jacked up and bad horns looking and all this. He kind of funny about stuff like that, so he put him down. So,
and some people really like to get those unique bulls like that. People,
I'm your huckleberry. Right?
Yeah, there you go.
That one you killed last year, Joe. Oh man, that what's got the big bar going down, the drop tine and all that. That's freaking crazy cool.
We're going to talk about elk calling confidence with this, and we had a chance to talk about calling confidence a bit on our reunion podcast, and when we were down there with you guys in South Texas, and that was just so cool. And for you guys that haven't seen that, go watch episode 10, the reunion. Get a chance to meet, see all of us together, meet the Venezuelan Mafia and Ken McCorkle, and get to see me, Chav, and Gilbert together instead of doing this face over to Houston, New Mexico thing. We make this work, and I really like it. But
look, we were blessed, man, to have you guys come down. I mean, questionably some really famous hunting guys from up there in New Mexico come down to our set and see how we roll in South Texas. I mean, it was not an easy hunt.
No,
I mean,
not at all.
Those pigs are very formidable. And you guys, y'all handle it like a champ. So
I've had nightmares, man. I mean, my nightmares have consisted of being stuck in this vast area of nothing but cactus and stickers, and all there is grid lines in between, and I can't go from one side to the other. I got to stick to the grid. I mean, that's some tough country down there. You just don't wander off into it.
I told you, that's why I tell all the guys. Now I guide down here year round for a lot of different things, and I tell guys all the time, y'all want to kill one of these hogs? I got no problem. But shoot them in the head. I'm not going in that rattlesnake infested brush country and go to chasing your animal down.
Yeah, right.
So,
So when we left your place, Chav and I were coming back on that 12-hour ride, and, it really gave us a good chance for a long discussion. And the cool thing about Chav is, again, he's been following me all these years, and he knows what I do, but now he's in his own venture, and he's taken this journey of elk calling along the way, and now he's just now starting to do the diaphragm call thing. So he's in that learning phase and brings a real good viewpoint on that. So after the discussion that we had, and the fact that calling confidence takes your hunting to such a different level, we really felt that we needed to revisit it. So that's what we're going to do right now. And so what I want to do is I want to start with Chav and have him talk about his calling journey. And, you know, I'm going to let him just start it off. We can throw in stuff here and there and we'll have a conversation, but I want him to give a viewpoint that sometimes I even forget.
Well, like Joe mentioned, you know, it is a journey. When I first started hunting, well, obviously I started hunting with Joe, and I watched him go from experimental caller to an expert caller. And for the longest time, and I didn't have to worry about calling. You know, I've killed more than my share of elk, and most of them were within 30 yards, and Joe called them in. And, you know, these would be those hot days where the, you know, the temperature would get up there in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, cool off in the 40s at night, but it'd get hot the next day and no one's hearing anything. And he's calling in bulls, you know. He's got the technique down. And then hunting with you the last couple of years, you know, I've seen you progress from a good caller to a proficient caller, and now you're an excellent caller. And I know with you and even with Joe, a lot of the opportunities that allowed you to become really good callers was the fact that you can get into a herd, sit there for an hour, seems like an hour, and listen to them talk.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Joe mentioned too that sometimes whenever you do hear a bugle, sometimes you kind of, I don't know if that's a bull or not, but rule number one is go after it anyway.
Check it out.
Yeah. I remember one time, you know, we took our 4x4 Nissan pickup,
Blackie.
they called Blackie, and we stopped. It was probably noon because we got there early. You know, got out of school early, got there around noon. Opened the door, closed it. It creaked, and a bull answered.
I'm telling you, get this, dude, man. We opened the door, just like that, and not 50 yards from the truck, this bull screams at us, man, and we're like, oh my gosh, this could be good today.
And the one lesson that taught me when that happened was, don't be afraid to try calling. Right. You know, I've always been afraid to use a diaphragm call, and it tickled my palate. And I just found the old hoochie mama and
awesome.
and different things to try. But when you can call with a diaphragm call, it takes you to a different level. It really does. And once you get to that level, then you can differentiate between different calls and even go to another level. So this year I decided, you know, I'm going to learn how to use a diaphragm call if it kills me. So I'd go to the back room every afternoon for about an hour and a half and turn on some hunting videos and try and mimic. Well, first of all, just try and make a noise with it.
Right.
Because it's not that easy when you're first starting. It's like, you know, and the whole thing is, once you do make a noise, it's hard to repeat that same noise. And every once in a while you get it right and you go, oh, I got it right. And then you try again and it's not right.
Yeah.
And I watched and listened to a lot of hunting videos, and they really didn't give me a whole lot because I wasn't able to get enough feedback. I actually get no feedback, but there weren't enough examples for me to gauge whether or not I was doing it right. So, you know, when I talked to Joe, I said, you know, when you do get your elk calling academy set up on ElkBros, you need to think about the beginning caller as well as the expert caller. And he's got information for both that'll help both. And one thing with the beginning callers is, you know, show them the basic cow calls. You know, you don't have to get fancy on the cow call, just the basic, and then repeat, so that if somebody's listening, they can try and mimic that.
Well, you were even talking about how some people don't, you know, when they get the diaphragm, they don't even know which way it goes.
Yeah, when I first got my diaphragm, I said, okay, which way does it go? Yeah. And then how come this one has a metal thing on it?
Yeah.
This has got a plastic thing on it, and some don't have anything on it.
Right.
And I even try to look at the instructions, but, you know, when you're first starting off, that's still foreign. And I think I'm getting to the point where, you know, with some more practice, you know, I think I'm going to be okay this year. So a lot of what I find would be real important for beginners, and even some people that have been doing it for a while but aren't sure how to advance, is, have a program where you can listen to a person cow calling, and maybe using that same call 10 times in a row, and then giving you, like a 20-second pause so you could practice it and then do it again. Something like that, real basic. It's kind of like shooting a layup in basketball. You start with the right footwork, one basket at a time. And then as you get better, you go faster and faster and faster. And as you get better at that, more proficient, then you start adding the fancy stuff. And,
usually, and when you really fancy to everybody out there is just really about emotion, it's about just taking what you have there, making it
putting some
shorter
texture with it.
Yeah, either adding some intensity, adding some volume, making it quieter, making it longer. It's just really about that. And what Chav's talking about is that sometimes the best teachers are the elk out there, because you're out there by the herd and you're like, yeah, and they're like, yeah. And you just go, you can hear them and you can mimic them and you can repeat them, and it just goes back and forth. Or a bull chuckles at you, and so you're trying to match up that chuckle back and forth. So what he's saying is that, it's nice when a beginner can hear you, then they can do it. And it's almost like a battle. It's a battle round back and forth. You do it, they do it. You do it, they do it. And, so I see what he's talking about there.
Yeah, and the same thing goes with the bugle too, because, we've heard all kinds of bugles. And a lot of the times, we tell ourselves, well, that's a hunter. I'm not a very good hunter. And we go around the corner and there's a bull elk. So you never know. And sometimes people say, well, that was a huge bull. I could tell by the bugle. And sometimes it's just a spike, or it's an old bull. You really can't tell. And that's where different nuances come into play. And, Joe's mentioned it before, one of the most basic calls is just raking a tree. Knowing when to do it in your sequence. Right. I was listening to, I don't recall the guy's name. He's pretty well known, and he came up with a cow call sequence, and he did it. He did it one time. So I couldn't tell you what that sequence was. Now, if he repeated that like 4 or 5 times, I'd say, okay, I know that sequence, do this, this, and that. But by doing it just one time, it was like, okay, so I didn't get it.
So, and it was still hard for you just to kind of do a rewind, play.
Yeah, that's
type of thing.
That would probably be, I'm not sure, our internet service isn't the greatest over here.
Right.
So rewinding it, playing it, rewinding it, playing it, it takes a lot of effort, where if you just have a continuous thing like that, I think that would really help a lot.
Right. Okay.
And I know there's a lot of hunters out there that are probably pretty good and just are afraid to do it. I know if you have a bull screaming down at you and your throat gets dry and it's like, time for a cow call, can I get it out or not?
Right.
And sometimes I don't even try it and they miss an opportunity.
One of the things that's really helped me is, number one, being with Joe for a lot of years and then hunting with Chav, but getting in those big elk herds and listening to the elk. Chav and I had an experience this year. It was crazy. I mean, I actually didn't even have a bow with me. I'd left my hat up at a kill site, and we went up there, and I had my bugle tube and a diaphragm, and we sat with a herd of elk for, I want to say it was pushing 45 minutes to an hour, calling bulls in and moving cows to us. And but I got to really enjoy listening to how a herd, calves, cows, bulls, satellite bulls, herd bulls, how they interact and watch their body language and also their calling. And I had about a 20-minute chuckle off with 2 different bulls, and it was awesome. So the fact that they didn't run up to the top of the ridge and leave the country, I knew that we were speaking the right language.
Right.
And those cows were like, where is that big son of a gun? They'd come running over to us, and then another bull would round around them, and, oh, we don't want you going over there. I mean, Chav and I wish we'd have recorded that because it was.
Well, and you didn't have any pressure, and it really makes it easier at that time too. You're not worried about getting on them sending you. You're just enjoying the moment. And
unbelievable. But I learned a lot.
You're a pretty proficient caller now. So where do you think at your level, because there's people that are kind of intermediate callers, people that can get out sounds, that can cow call, that can bugle, that can do a chuckle. Chav's at that stage where he's trying to get his basics down. He's trying to get his basic cow call, his basic chuckle, his basic bugle. And I tell people that's all you need, because from there, you're just going to add some different intensity, volumes, length, and different stuff like that. But so where do you feel your gaps are in calling elk?
Yeah. So for me, the number one thing for me to close the gap was, number one, to get my diaphragm to fit, right? Not every diaphragm you pull out of the package is right for your mouth. Right. I have an extremely small palate, and so when that big diaphragm gets in my mouth, I can't make it do what I need to do. And, some really knowledgeable elk guys told me, well, you can cut that latex around it, and get it to where it'll fit. So when I did that,
if you just cut these on the side right here,
cut it around the edge. I cut all the way around that diaphragm so it fits really well up in there, and I can make for me calling now, less is more, and quieter calls are better. But I really let the elk dictate. And then, of course, Chav's always there saying, hey,
but what I'm asking is, though, Gilbert, is what do you think your weaknesses are that you want to improve on? Before you go to that too, I'm going to show you what he's talking about right there. And a lot of people, you guys, it's better to trim the sides before you trim the back off, because that back is what seals against that soft palate. This part right here is going to be in the front palate, and this part's going to be in the back palate. Now, if it starts to gag you and you're getting it too far back there and you're gagging, you might need to move it up more close to your eye teeth, or you might need to trim a little bit in the back if you got a real small palate up there and you're getting that gag reflex. But you can see the difference for somebody with a wider palate. Now, the metals are the metal on the inside of it's about the same here. And I know some of you on the podcast aren't going to see this. If you're on the YouTube channel, you can see what I'm talking about. That part is pretty much the same, and it's all about how you trim it up as far as the rest of it. So that's what you were talking about. Now, Gilbert,
and as far as the proficient part of where I lack, there's no doubt it's the being proficient with some of the extracurricular bugles, right? Like the chuckle part was really a part where I have, and I still need to work on it. I have a small one that I do that tends to really fire them up. They don't like it, but for me, learning how to imitate that bull that I'm calling, that's like, man, that's heaven on earth. When you do that just incenses them, right? So, but again, I had to learn how to make those sounds. And, I use a tube like you do. And I think, like I said, the gaps in my calling were, number one, understanding when to do that. And number two, how to accomplish that chuckle, right? I think that was the toughest thing for me.
So, for somebody in your level, I think now where you're at is it's important to figure out what stories to tell, or what is the temperament of the animal that you're trying to get in. Is that animal, a bull that's not wanting to fight? Is that a bull that just wants to come in and check out a herd bull with his cows? I mean, if you start getting too aggressive with some of them, you can spook them off. So there's certain calls, you got to learn to know the temperament and which type of calls are aggressive and which calls are passive, which calls are fighters and which calls are for lovers. That's the way I always put it. And when you guys were in camp, you guys used to ask me, say, well, which call should I use the most? And that's tough because it depends on the time of the year. And a lot of these elk would rather be a lover than a fighter sometimes, So that's something to keep in mind there. And so I think you're right. Your gaps now are learning to understand the different parts of the language and whether that's a passive animal, aggressive animal, if they're buying in, if they're engaging, or if they have some fear, or if they just want to come in and try to steal a cow from you because you're doing your thing, tending some cows. So I think that's a big part. And I'm going to real quickly before we go into the next part, if you could, what was the turning point for you and your confidence with calling, Gil?
Watching elk react, and being with Chav. There, one year, the first year you put me with Chav, we had an unbelievable event happen where we called 2 herds of elk together, and 2 giant bulls approached us. I'd already tagged out, so I was getting to be with Chav, and it was an awesome hunt. And just watching the elk react to the calling.
So it was about results, right?
It was for me. For me, and then being in camp, having you go, wow, man, that sounds pretty good, right? That first morning you and I tagged up. We shot bulls that morning. We sounded good together. We sounded like a little herd moving, and heck, we had bulls on us in the dark, So I knew then that I'd listened to you for 7-8 years, and I knew that I could mimic some of that stuff, and I knew when to do it. I just needed that assurance that the elk were going to be okay.
Plus, you had Chav behind you going, now do this.
Yeah, for sure.
Do that.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Do this, do that, do this, do that. But I could accomplish the call. Right. So then it was just learning about when to do it and how to do it. And look, I'm not going to lie. When I hunt with Chav, it's precious to me. I still defer to him because he got 30 some odd years of knowledge. I'm, 8 or 10. But when it comes to being able to make the call, I know I'm going to sound right.
Right.
And if we can get within range of that bull, we're going to get him that.
So that's what I want people to understand out there is when we're talking about calling confidence, you have to understand that confidence is really result driven.
Yeah.
Whether that result is acceptance, like you said, from other hunters, that you're with a mentor or somebody's been doing it for a while. And like you said, it's like, oh, yeah.
When Joe turns his head and looks at you and go, oh man, yeah, well, you got it going on. Or Chav goes, dude, that was amazing, right? You sound a lot like Joe. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep doing that.
There were a couple of times where it was like,
yeah, no, don't do that no more. I had my wrong diaphragm. I didn't figure that out till the second day.
So whether that confidence comes from, that result is acceptance from other hunters, like you said, getting a response, that's huge, man. When you make a call, and whether it's a cow call and you get a cow call coming back, or you make a cow call and you get a bull that comes back, or even better, what you had talked about is seeing a cow or a bull's reaction, to your call. When you see it, it kind of stinks though. I bet you've had this happen, and I know you've seen it with us when you're out there and man, you're calling to this bull, you see him out in the middle of the park and he's just like, I could care less, man, and starts feeding it. And that, to me, is like one of the funnest things to come across, because now it's like, all right, what is going to ring this dog's bell, right?
Yeah.
What is going to push his button? What is it that's going to get him? And whenever you have an animal that's by themselves, that is not interested in another bull that's screaming at them, that is not interested in being aggressive, remember they are herd animals and they are social. So there's other things that you can do. So seeing that cow and bull's reaction is huge. And man, I tell you, Gilbert, I know the first time, like you talked about calling in those couple of bulls, man, that probably took your confidence even to another level, right?
No doubt. No doubt. I feel today that anytime I go in the woods that I can if we're in the area of some bulls, we can make it happen. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I know that I can call them. I know I feel like I'm better at understanding their body, their language, the right sets to get into. And I've really understood that once you get one fired up, it's all about just speaking the language and getting him to do what you want him to do.
But what I want our listeners to also understand is this: you can be doing all the right things calling, and you are getting results, but they're just not the ones that you're looking for. In other words, animals can be coming in silent, and
seen that a bunch.
Yeah. And a lot of times we're impatient. We move off before those animals get in there. You know, they're moving in silent, and you find yourself doing something when it takes a little bit of time. Next thing you do, you look up, and there's an animal on top of you. So they might also be responding in a way that you either missed or you didn't hear, or you're not able to hear because, you know, topography, just how the lay of the land goes. How many times have we bumped into people
in the way?
Yeah, we're like we're in elk. We're hearing bugles all morning, and we're like, everybody's got to be hearing these bulls. And then, you know, you walk a half mile and you bump into another hunter, and you go, "How's it going?" It's like, man, they're just not calling. They're shut up, you know.
Yeah, you look at each other like, huh?
Yeah. But they're a half mile away,
right?
And you know, the thick trees, the roll in the hills, they're on the other side of a ridge, right? Yeah. All of that, you know, can mess with you. It could be that they're chuckling, you know, and you're not hearing that high pitched bugle. So, and I'll tell you another thing is, and this is a huge one, man. And if I can educate you guys out there on anything, it's this. Is that one of the reasons that you might be missing responses is that you or your partner are too noisy. Either your equipment is making a lot of a noise, because, man, once they get into the trees, or even if they're way far off, you can make a noise that can cover that high pitch, and you're going to miss it, and you're going to think nothing's calling out there when they are. Or, you know, I can't tell you how many times I'll stop and to bugle, and I'm bugling, and all of a sudden, man, I hear zippers coming down. I hear food coming out. I hear gunk, gunk, gunk with the water bottle. It drives me nuts, man. Yeah.
Wrong time. I mean, look, the bull could be right on top of you, you know, and he's going to blaze right in there, and everybody's standing there with food in their hands. I mean, really?
and they're not able to hear responses, man.
No doubt.
You know? And that's the main thing, is when you're trying to locate. And I think what happens too is some guys start to get to the point where they don't think something's going to come in, and they're on a nature hike or something. Mm-hmm. But, you know, guys, you can hunt for hours and days, and it only takes 5 minutes for things to change like crazy.
Oh, man, no doubt.
And it's like you're not ready for it sometimes, because you get in that mode of just trucking along. All right. Another reason you might have missed it is because you disregard a bull's response as being another hunter. And, you know, there are times and ways sometimes that you can tell that calls are a hunter. But when it comes to hearing a weird bugle, or hearing a bugle that you're like, oh, that's got to be another hunter, check it out. Because even if it is another hunter, it gives you an opportunity to talk to somebody, to get a little bit of recon, to meet somebody out there, get some information that might help you for your evening hunt, might help you for the rest of your hunt. You know, so it's not a bad thing. And don't be embarrassed if you get called in, you know. Big deal, man. I mean, at least you had some excitement for a few minutes there, right? You know?
Yeah, for sure. We've been called in, and we've called in a lot of people. I mean, but rule 101 is when you hear a bull, you better go look.
Yeah, you got to go check it out, especially if it's hard to really hear it and there's wind and different stuff like that. It could be that they hear you but are not responding to you or coming in because of so many other types of variables. It could be the story or the picture that you're portraying. You know, if you've got a young bull out there and he's got one cow with him and you're acting all aggressive, man, he's not wanting to lose that cow, you know, that young bull. If there's a herd bull with cows and you're not within his zone where he wants to defend that, and you're screaming at him, you're being aggressive, man, he's just going to round them up and move them out of there. I'll tell you the biggest mistake I made one time. I stalked all the way in between a group of cows and a bull bedded down. The bull stood up, walked away 20 yards, and I thought, oh man, I'm between him and his cow. I'll give a cow call, and it's going to happen. I gave that cow call. Everything jumped up and blew out of there because there was no story before that. None of those cows were talking. I didn't pay attention to my environment, man. So because they weren't talking, he wasn't talking to them, and all of a sudden this cow came out of nowhere giving a cow call. He immediately, the jig was up, man. He knew what was going on. He got him out of there. So the story or picture you're portraying could be keeping them quiet. So you got to think about that. Also the phase of the rut, because the early rut, they're just not going to respond as much. So you really got to be listening. You got to be stopping and listening when you're calling. It could be that they've scented you, so they're moving out, or it could have been that they've already been bumped by another hunter, So there's a lot of reasons that you might not be getting the results that you think you are. So that's something for you to keep in mind, guys, on that.
Yeah, and sometimes it could just be a physical barrier. I remember one time you were calling, you said, I thought I heard something over yonder. And we were at the edge of a little ravine, and we saw a bull running towards us. And he stopped at the edge of the ravine on the other side, looked down, and just turned around and went back the other way.
Yeah, he didn't want to cross.
He just didn't want to cross a real short ravine to get to us. So
yeah,
I thought that was kind of weird. Maybe he sent us. I don't know if you recall that incident.
No, I in fact, that bull was a huge bull.
Yeah, he was a big guy.
Yeah, and I mean, we were probably 50 yards from him across the ravine, and never even considered taking the shot. We thought he was going to come up to us. And
he came in kind of silent, if I remember.
Yeah, well, he came. In fact, he came in, left, came back to the same spot, left again. I think he did that 3 times.
Just didn't want to go down and up.
That's another thing to remember too, guys, is that usually a bull, when they come into you and they do hang up to an area and they turn and leave out, shut up, move to that area that they last came to, because they knew they were safe to that point. They knew that they were good to that spot. And if you get up there and you throw some calls back behind you, that bull will come right back up to that same spot and give you an opportunity. So that's something to remember that we learned the hard way there. Not only, we have a lot of cattle fences, what you call, 4-strand, 3-strand, 5-strand, and sometimes those bulls will come that and they'll just like walk up and down it and not come across it. So there could be different things, that cause that to happen.
Watched several of them last year.
Right.
Yeah.
That same thing. Finally got an idea and made him interested. And
yeah.
They
come
just
across.
Kept right on coming. Yeah.
But that's a tough one. I mean, you got to really sell it, man. I think some of the biggest differences between veteran hunters and beginners is that veteran hunters understand that just because they call, they're not always going to get an answer. They understand that. And I think beginners are out there thinking, oh, I'm giving the call, they got to come in. If it's early pre-rut, there's just not as many responses. If you haven't hit the right button, then you need to work at portraying a different story. Can
you explain portraying a story?
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about, and so does Gilbert, but there's probably some people out there.
So there's a lot of reasons why elk give certain calls. Sometimes they give a call just to say, hey, I'm here. It's not aggressive, and just communicating socially with other bulls, and you'll hear them sound off in different places. And or I could be a bull that is looking to pick up a cow. So I'm trying to engage another bull and be a little bit more aggressive. So when I get if I'm telling the story of me being an aggressive bull, I'm trying to get the ire of another bull and get him so that he becomes defensive and wants to defend his cows, or he just wants to come and prove his pecking order, one way or the other. So I'm portraying a picture. But, for example, in the early part of the season, a lot of those young bulls, they don't want to be lovers. They don't want to be fighters, man. And so a lot of times when you hear a bull sound off, you don't necessarily want to engage him. You don't want to scream back at him aggressively because you're going to spook him off. What you might want to do is paint a different picture, tell a different story of maybe a bull with his cows just tending his cows by giving those kinds of rutting sounds, the cow mews, the roundup bugles, the chuckles. A chuckle is not an aggressive call. The glunking, that's something that I don't hear people talk about very often, is a glunking call. And I'm going to
tell you, it sounds like rubbing when I first heard it the first time, it sounded just like a tin can. You just rub it together.
I'm going to give you an example right here. And this is an example of a, that's the example of a glunk that those bulls do when they're around their cows. It's basically to me, and the way I've done it, I've always seen it when they're trying to let the cows know where they're at, and they're kind of keeping those cows herded together and keeping them moving in a direction. Now, we do know that where a herd goes is determined by the lead cow, but when that bull starts to feel that other bulls are in the area, they will kind of circle around and do that glunking, trying to keep them a little bit on the tight side. So that's a sound that you could do, and you could do those kind of noises so that that one bull that's off there doesn't feel like you're challenging him. He hears those kind of responses where you're involved with the herd, and so he's coming in closer. And once he gets into a certain point where he gets in your bubble, just like a real bull, and he starts to engage, now you can get a little bit aggressive with him and you can light him up. You don't want to necessarily still blow him out of there, but that's what I mean by telling a story. Sometimes you're not calling to the bull that you want. You're making him think that there's other bulls involved. That's like I do a double bugle when I'm trying to locate. I tell you, I've gone on ridges and I have bugled, no response. Bugled, no response. Bugle, no response. And I give a double bugle, and all of a sudden, man, I get a response. Because now that bull out there hears two other bulls challenging each other, and that gets him, that pushes his button to throw out a call. And I kind of give you an example what I mean by that. I'm going to turn on this other mic and try not to blow you guys out here. So it's basically one bull cutting off another bull. And it sounds, just by doing those two, going to that high pitch, starting to come down and going right back up, it sounds like two bulls in the same area challenging each other. So another bull, it might light them up because they don't feel like it's challenging them. You understand that?
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so that's one way to do that. The other thing that you can do that a lot of veteran hunters do is if the elk aren't, if they're not excited, you can get them excited, man. You can create the excitement.
Party time.
Party time, right? Yeah.
Make it happen.
Put on our own party, man, and make them interested in getting in that.
Yeah, you guys did that last year, huh?
Yeah.
You and Gilbert were just bugling at each other.
You get three different callers back there, and you make it sound like bulls are. There's some cows there. You kind of sound like bulls that are starting to engage, and then you raise the intensity a little bit. You start to tell that story of them.
Yeah, you get a lot of curious satellite bulls coming in.
Right.
And you get even cows come in just to see what's happening.
Well, the cows are coming in because they want a dominant bull.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're making that move. So those are the types of things that you want to do.
I can't tell you the times that you guys have called for me, and you and RC Knox and several Carl Gamage, when they go away from you and they leave you in position. That's a huge key. For me, I like hunting 2-on-1 because you can actually do that. Set two guys up in front, then you start moving away, and that bull's going to follow that sound.
Right.
and you just drag them right by. And
Right.
it's been, even with Chav and I hunting together and him using the hoochie mama and me using the diaphragm call, it's been unbelievable. And I've watched those elk react to that hoochie mama call because it's an exact call, right?
Right.
And it doesn't get messed up. And I mean, it's a perfect cow mew just about every time you push it. And when you've already got one fired up and he's coming, man, it really settles him down, and he's wanting to keep coming,
Right.
So
No, exactly. And the other thing that I tell people is experienced elk hunters, if they're not getting responses, they start paying attention to other things as well. You're just not relying on the calling. You're paying attention to your nose, man, because you pick up that scent. You can turn it on those bulls. You can get right into them. You can just hunt right into that odor. Listen for other types of elk sounds. Listen for breaking branches, rolling rocks, bulls fighting, raking trees. We had one year I had a bull. Chav's behind me with a camera. That bull is at that time probably 60 yards away, ripping up. We never heard him bugle. We just heard him thrashing a tree, worked in there, came around and saw him working over this juniper. And so first thing I do is I get down and I try to sound like a young bull. I said, oh man, he'll come in because it won't be threatening. He'd stick his head up, go right back to work on that tree. Just didn't care, And this scene happened over and over to a point where I was like, dude, I'm just going to, next time he puts his head in the tree, I'm just going to walk up and shoot him, right? So before I did that, I was like, let me try something. And I cranked out the biggest, gnarliest bull I could down the other direction. And that boy brought his head up and started coming to us. And the reason he did was he figured there was a herd bull down there with cows. He wasn't interested in another small bull. That wasn't his interest. So
yeah,
that was the story at that time. So, there's other sounds that you can hear. I would say the other thing to help yourselves out is knowing the best time to locate bulls. When would you say that is?
Best time would be nighttime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Early morning, late night, but then sometimes middle of the day happens.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, especially for us when those guys start going in the trees early, or coming out late, going in early. They're going to do more of that midday action. But in locating them, nighttime, a couple hours before daylight, a couple hours after dark are the best time, because bulls are now in the lower openings. They've gone down low where it's cooler. The conditions are stiller. And I don't know if people know this, but sound travels louder and farther when it's cold. So when they get down in those bottoms, now they're not in trees, they're in open meadows, and they've got hills on the side with the cool air. And that itself almost acts like a grunt tube. It just projects that noise for you to be able to hear. So it makes it a whole lot easier. And when it's cooler, they bugle more. Okay. During the day.
Yeah. And you can understand if you can hear them, if you can hear them, they can hear them. I'm telling you, they got amazing hearing, and they can pinpoint exactly where you're at when they hear it.
That's one of the reasons that we talk about throwing sounds behind you to try to fool some of that, But, during the day, bulls, when they're in the trees, with the density of the trees and the topography, man, that just absorbs the sound. The sound moves faster because of the warm air, and it's just harder for you to hear them. So, guys, for your elk calling confidence, pay attention to that. Understand, we know that this is result driven, but understand sometimes have confidence in your calling. If you're not getting response, think about the story you're telling. Tell a different story. Understand that it just might be a time when they aren't calling as much, and pay attention to your other senses. Optimize your ability to locate by going and doing night calling and locate then. You might.
So Joe, if you were gonna if you were going to start with your elk calling confidence, which calls would you need?
So basically, I tell people just start with those basic calls of an elk mew, a bugle, and a chuckle. There's a difference between a grunt and a chuckle. You can look them up on YouTube, elk grunt and an elk chuckle. You know, one is aggressive and one's not, so you can learn about those. And, you know, we kind of talked about that stuff when we were down in Texas. So we're not going to go back and re-hit that right now. I think right now we're just over the hour mark, and we've covered a lot of stuff here. You know, I think y'all's viewpoints on things were just super.
Can you go over just one thing to clarify for beginners? You said you throw calls behind you.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So I use a different type of grunt tube. I use the Carleton grunt tube. I always have. Probably the main reason that I originally used this grunt tube was it's what they sold at Walmart. I make sure that I put a cover on it I don't want any unnatural sounds when it's on there, but because it's flexible, I'm able to put this tube around me just like this, and I can have it pointed back behind me, and I can have this right here, right by my mouth. So when I'm holding my bow, I can actually hold my bow and I can give a call and I can point that grunt tube, project it back behind me in different directions. I actually direct which way I want a bull come in.
Yeah, you steer the bull
I
to
steer
go
him
in the direction you want it to go.
Yeah. So if a bull's going off to the left, I can just throw that call back over opposite side of me, and man, they stop, look, and they start coming the other direction, and have done that a lot. And by projecting back behind me this way, it's going to go and hit trees or something back in the back, and it's going to make that bull think I'm another 50, 60 yards behind me, and that could mean the difference between him hanging up 80 yards out and me getting a 20-yard shot. You know, a lot of those, a lot of guys use those new bat tubes, and they're great for volume and stuff like that. But for a solo hunter, it would really be difficult for me without making a lot of movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when I mean solo hunter, I don't hunt alone. I hunt with somebody else. But since I'm calling animals into myself, I actually act like a solo hunter. So I'm throwing sounds back behind me. So that's what I do. And what's nice is when I have when I have this tube here and I throw it and that animal starts coming in, all I have to do is just drop and push on the front of it. Now it's behind me and I'm perfectly able to draw. And that little motion right there doesn't do anything. Everything's nice and tight. Everything's right in there, so I don't have to worry about it. So that's really been my MO, man. I mean, it's brought in a lot of animals.
I use it a lot all the time. And, you know, we talked about Chav and I getting hooked up this year, and that little trick to being able to throw that bugle in different areas meant us being successful or not. And it was painful. It took a long time for us to get those bulls to figure out that we were something over there that they wanted to come look at. But it was because we were patient and we were able to throw those cow mews and the softer bugles that those bulls decided that they just couldn't take it anymore. They had to come see.
And I do want to show you guys, man, that's that 1.5 inch front on there. And then it does have the flare barrel on the front of it. So I get that volume when it comes out of there too. So
I
it's
use the same one.
Yeah. You know, gosh, I've lost so many. I have to buy them by Wayne.
Yeah, for a solo.
Look us up, Wayne.
Yeah.
You know, Wayne, I think I helped Mark go through school, bud. So just on grunt tubes.
Yeah, I would say it's a must for a solo hunter to have a grunt tube like that.
Like that, yeah.
I know the popularity of the bat tube, but usually it's two people hunting together and one's calling back here, so they don't have to worry about any kind of movement.
And it's great. The only thing I want to remind you, though, is think about volume. You know, volume is great trying to reach out and get an animal to answer you out there. But sometimes, you know, when you're putting a lot of volume out in front of you when animals coming in, they're thinking that you're closer to them than what you are. So again, remember what story you're trying to tell. And, you know, there's a lot of guys do a lot of great things out there. I'm just trying to tell you beginners that, you know, think about the fact of what you're trying to portray to that elk. In fact, I always lead off with a cow call, and I like to cow call through my tube. But before I ever cow call through my tube, I cow call just flat out, because there could be an animal closer to me, and by me throwing all that volume out there with a cow call, they're going to think that cow's a lot closer to them, and start expecting that animal to come into them. So that's just another little tip there. And I think we're going to have to close it out here, Gil.
Yeah, no, look, we look forward to the next subject in our confidence series, which is going to be equipment. So
Right.
I want everybody to remember to subscribe. We don't mind if you throw us a 5-star rating. Right?
Yeah.
Good luck to all of those out there that are still waiting on their draw. But until next time, from H-Town here in the house, we wish everybody many blessings, and look forward to keep grinding it out with y'all every week, and look forward to seeing all of our podcasters next week for sure.
Yep. We'll see you next Tuesday. We might even have a couple of surprise ones in between there. But if you subscribe, you'll be alerted to everything. So guys, just keep dreaming the dream, keep prepping, keep working. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Good night, bro.